Hello, everyone, and welcome to In the Trenches, Kroll's weekly cyber threat intelligence briefing. Today is the 6th of May. My name is George Glass, an Associate Managing Director in the Threat Intelligence team. Joining me today is Ryan Hicks, Mukesh Nagar, and Ethan Afori. As always, we'll be covering the most recent trends that our threat intelligence team is witnessing in the trenches. So let's start with the situation report. First up, we have a report on some concerns that UK defence contractors have with specifically Chinese EVs. UK defence firms, including Lockheed Martin and Thales, have advised staff against connecting mobile phones to Chinese-made electric vehicles due to concerns over potential espionage and data theft. Many of these vehicles are equipped with cameras, microphones, and internet connectivity. The UK's Ministry of Defence has implemented measures to mitigate these threats, instructing employees to avoid pairing devices with such vehicles and to refrain from discussing work-related matters inside them. Remember, in the past, fitness trackers have been used to de-anonymise training bases and staff members, and I think that's part of the risk that the UK Ministry of Defence is working to mitigate here. Next up, a public proof of concept has been released for two older SonicWall vulnerabilities. Last week, Watchtwr has released a technical breakdown of two critical vulnerabilities in SonicWall's SMA 100 appliance. That's CVE 2023-44221 and CVE 2024-38475. These allow attackers to read any file on the file system without authentication, and enable command execution through the nobody user in a post-authentication command injection vulnerability. The vulnerabilities can be combined to gain administrative control over the appliance and have already been used in attacks. This technical breakdown is essentially just releasing POCs to the public. Of course, we recommend updating SonicWall devices to avoid active exploitation. These vulnerabilities have been exploited for some time previously, so ensure those SonicWall devices are up to date. And remember, if you have any questions or comments, please do get in touch with us using cti@kroll.com. So let's get into the rest of today's briefing. We will be covering the following trends. Ryan and I will be talking through attacks on UK retail and KTA 243, that's scattered spider. Mukesh will be covering some Apple AirPlay vulnerabilities, and we have Ethan here to give us some further insight into DRAGONFORCE in this week's ransomware roundup. So, if you're from the UK, I don't think you would have missed this one, but over the last few weeks, UK retailers, including Marks and Spencer, the Co-operative, and Harrods, have all suffered cybersecurity incidents. Some attribution has been made by open sources. Some news sources, including Beacon Computer, has attributed the attacks to Scatter Spider, which we track as KTA 243. The incident impacted Marks and Spencer's websites that included sales, in-store purchasing, and affected distribution centers. And according to Bleeping Computer, the incident may have been ongoing since early February, with the claims of an exfiltration of the ntds.dit file, which contains Active Directory data. It's also believed that DRAGONFORCE is the ransomware suspected to have been used to encrypt VMware ESXi virtual machines. Our understanding of the timeline is that in February 2025, the initial breach was suspected. That led to the exfiltration of ntds.dit. On April 22nd, M&S publicly disclosed the cyber attack, and on April 24th, the DRAGONFORCE ransomware was deployed on those hosts, encrypting virtual machines. That is according to Bleeping Computer. Of course, the attribution has been made to KTA 243. It's unclear whether the attack that was disclosed by the Co-op group on April 30th and by Harrods on May the 1st is also connected to this group, but the assumption is that it is a singular group conducting all of these attacks. Obviously, here at Kroll, we've been working with a lot of customers in the retail sector. We've been working with the NCSC as well on this matter in a number of different ways. Just a couple of points on attribution before I hand over to Ryan to give us a briefing on Scatter Spider. Attribution to a singular group is, of course, very difficult, but based on the behaviors and the indicators that we've seen from our investigations and from reporting and our intelligence partners, we do attribute this to the KTA 243 intrusion set. It's likely that attempted attacks on this sector will continue. The group is very opportunistic. It's a very nebulous group. And we advise all of those, especially in the UK retail industry, to be on heightened alert footing. With that, I will pass over to Ryan to talk more about KTA 243 or Scatter Spider. Over to you, Ryan.
Thanks, George. Yeah, just a kind of a quick overview on the group. As George mentioned, they were kind of attributing to the incidents recently. So yeah, as George mentioned, kind of a nebulous group, not really believed to operate under that kind of single leadership, and more akin to a kind of community, if you like, rather than kind of having a fixed organizational structure, whereby the kind of individuals and kind of subgroups all kind of have their own interests and techniques that they use, as well as the kind of their own kind of personal gains, perhaps between intrusions. Overall, the activity that kind of been attributed to this cluster displays really the motivation for financial gain, and that's usually through either sort of selling access gained to other actors or through extortion, using sensitive data exfiltrated, as well as ransomware deployment, or kind of a mixture of those three. Just looking at some of the recent DTPs that we've observed linked to the cluster, so really a heavy use of multiple social engineering vectors. So that includes kind of phishing, voice phishing, SMS phishing, really kind of which really kind of tied into to this group, often calling the company's help desk directly to gain access to the victim accounts, and that's largely previous kind of observations have seen them trying to gain access to these valid accounts in the first instance. Also quite heavily use brand impersonation for when they're kind of registering domains, particularly during phishing attempts. So you see a few examples there where they've kind of created domains where it's kind of the victim name -Okta and various other kind of domains from there. And quite a because they've largely gained access to the valid accounts that I mentioned, have heavy use of living off the land techniques, just depending on the kind of privileges they've gained in the first instance. So this includes kind of gathering various bits of data from information repositories, code repositories, as well as chat applications such as Slack, just sort of seeing what they can find to kind of gain particularly kind of internal technical documentation amongst those. Also use of remote access tooling, largely Screen Connect has been kind of a big one, as well as TeamViewer. And that leads on to information stealers, so kind of a wide range of information stealers being deployed, typically before ransomware deployment. So you've seen Loom Stealer, StealSeat, and Vidar. And lastly, deployment of ransomware in some cases, as I mentioned, sometimes it is to sell that access, sometimes is for ransomware, and a few kind of linked ransomware affiliations at the bottom there, Ransom Hub, Black Cat, and say potentially DRAGONFORCE, which is what we've noted. Of course, DRAGONFORCE, as George mentioned, was deployed here. And just on to the next slide, just some recommendations here. So really the first one being sort of staff awareness. So as it's really heavy on social engineering, so looking out for kind of out of the blue calls, and very kind of heavy on the voice calling people, or victims and IT help desks, and also on the lookout for multi-factor authentication fatigue, where you're not expecting it. So it could be where they're kind of spamming when they've got access to the accounts, spamming kind of the MFA that's available, to try and hope that the victim kind of accepts it. Also implementing privilege of least principle of least privilege, and that's really where the kind of limiting the access that certain users have to different different services depending on their task. As mentioned, if the group can accidentally land on someone with really high privileges that maybe has an Okta admin or a really high privileges to certain services, then they'll use that quite willingly. So yeah, just limiting what users have what access depending on their particular tasks. And related to the social engineering, sort of really looking at the kind of policies and around the help desk, considering implementing kind of additional checks around who's calling into the help desk, particularly around kind of password resets and changes to MFA. And just lastly here, just a note, at Kroll, we have threat-led penetration testing services, particularly with experience with the group and various playbooks around their TTPs, as I mentioned on the last slide. So yeah, contact us for use of those services. And that's all for me. I'll hand back to George.
Thanks, Ryan. Yes, absolutely. Reach out to a Kroll representative if you want to test those policies. We're always willing to help in any way we possibly can. Mukesh, over to you to talk about the AirBorne vulnerability. Over to you, sir.
Thank you so much, George, and hello, everyone. So researchers over at Oligo Security Research recently discovered a large set of vulnerabilities found in Apple's AirPlay protocol, as well as their SDK, so their software development kit. They've dubbed this set of vulnerabilities that they've identified as AirBorne. The vulnerabilities don't only just affect Apple's own devices, they also impact third-party products that use AirPlay. The vulnerability allows for various attack paths, including zero-click remote code execution, sensitive information leaks, as well as man-in-the-middle attacks. Even more concerning, some of the vulnerabilities identified are wormable, which allows the malware to spread across the network without any user interaction at all. Although Apple has released patches for majority of these vulnerabilities, as shown on the screen, due to the widespread impact of these vulnerabilities, it's extremely important for users and vendors to ensure that updates are applied immediately. The most critical of all are two specific vulnerabilities. These are CVE 2025-24252 and CVE 2025-24132. When both chained together, they could allow wormable zero-click remote code execution attacks on macOS and AirPlay-enabled devices. An infected device could spread malware to other nearby devices silently and automatically. As for recommendations, we recommend users to update all Apple products immediately. This includes macOS, iOS devices, devices running CarPlay, as well as other smart devices that have built-in AirPlay. If your device has an AirPlay receiver and you are not using it, we also recommend this being disabled, as well as limiting AirPlay access to only current users and restrict network access to trusted devices as well. That's all from me, George. Back to you.
Thank you, Mukesh. And we've talked about DRAGONFORCE a lot today. Here to give us a little bit more insight into the group is Ethan. Over to you, Ethan.
Thanks, George. So originally launched in August 2023 as a traditional ransomware as a service, DRAGONFORCE, or KTA 276, has now evolved into what they call a ransomware cartel, and this new model is significant. Instead of requiring affiliates to use DRAGONFORCE's encryptor and branding, the group now lets affiliates use its infrastructure under their own names, allowing affiliates to white label DRAGONFORCE's infrastructure. You can think of it like Costco's Kirkland brand, but for cyber criminals. Under the structure, DRAGONFORCE provides everything: malware, a management system, file storage, negotiation tools, and even 24/7 server monitoring. In return, they take a 20% cut of the ransom payment, which is actually lower than what most other ransomware as a service providers usually take. You can go to the next slide. Thank you. One of the most concerning elements is that this setup appeals to threat actors who may lack deep technical expertise. So by handling the back-end complexity, DRAGONFORCE lowers the barrier to entry and potentially flooding the ransomware ecosystem with more active attackers. Interestingly, the group has publicly claimed to follow this moral compass, saying they avoid targeting cancer and heart patients and may even donate to those victims. But still, their core goal remains profit, and their methods represent an escalation in threat actor capabilities. Security researchers warn that this distributed model could drive the next wave of ransomware attacks. It increases scale, decentralization, and resiliency in a way that's harder for law enforcement to track and dismantle. Thank you, George.
Thank you very much, Ethan, and thank you to Mukesh and Ryan for also presenting today. That's all we've got for this week. If you have any questions or comments, please do reach out to us using cti@kroll.com. Have a wonderful day.